when a driver goes out on his first lap on new tyres. In fact, some of them, and Schumacher in particular, didn't go very quickly. And only in the final long right-hand corner onto pit straight did he then lean on that set of tyres. So while Coulthard in this parade lap will not be running as hard as Schumacher would have done in his out lap, still there will be a reasonable amount of, let's say, scrub or scuff on the tyre. There you can see the front. That's Damon Hill's car, looking forward to David Coulthard, but we don't think Hill started on a brand new set of tyres. But from what we can see, looking forward to Coulthard's car, those tyres are probably comfortably ready for a blistering first lap from David Coulthard. Remember his start at Monza, second start, not his first one because he made that from the pit lane, but the second start he got it absolutely perfect and just drew away from the field.
Well, last year, remember, Gerhard Berger led in the early laps here. Then when he fell out, Coulthard was leading the race. It was a good battle between him and Hill, with Hill finally managing to dive down the inside into that new, very tight corner, going on to take the lead and going on to take the victory ahead of Coulthard. Are we going to see a similar battle between the two teammates? But don't forget that Michael Schumacher wasn't here last year, and he's right behind them on the grid to try and join in the party as well. Damon Hill moves over to the right-hand side of the circuit. Not quite so clean on that side.
No, that side of the track is the less preferred side. It is dirty on that, the left-hand side of your screen, right-hand side of the track. And anybody on that side will want to get over to the left as quickly as possible.
The Portuguese Grand Prix is just seconds away from starting. We've got the last few cars moving into position now, and Jean-Denis Delatraz right at the back of that group. He'll be the final one in his Pacific Ford to take his place. There you can just see the blue car slotting into position on our left-hand side. We've got David Coulthard on the right-hand side of the picture. Damon Hill on the left. Watch out for Schumacher. He's directly behind Coulthard, of course. Gerhard Berger on that second row as well. Green flag from the back. We wait for the lights then, and the Portuguese Grand Prix will get underway. Red light comes on. It switches to green, and away they go. And who's got the best start? It's a good start from David Coulthard. Damon Hill booked into second place by the looks of things.
Tyrrell has turned upside down and is spinning across the track. Two cars have come into contact. Problems also in the first corner. And there you see the result of what happens frequently here in Portugal. And that is the remains of Inocho Katayama, we think. And there one of those, Moreno's car also trapped, red flag, very quickly out. And this is an unfortunate and a very unpleasant incident here at the start of this Portuguese Grand Prix, always towards the back of the grid. It is difficult to see precisely what is happening. There, Luca Badour out of his Minardi Ford, and cars and damaged and body parts all over the start, straight here in Estoril, and the medical team now very quickly in attendance. Of course, concern around this car, the car probably reasonably full of fuel, of course. Nobody knows just quite how much each car will have on board, but certainly in the region of 80 litres, I would say. The medical team quickly to the Tyrrell, and we wait now for that car to be righted and to have the medical attendants get there and ensure that the process of withdrawing the driver from the cockpit is done in the time it takes. There is no pressure. Let's watch again. Here's a rerun of the start. Look just at the very back, you'll suddenly see the Tyrrell rear up and go from left of your screen across to the right. And there, looking forward, there it is.
There, Yukio Katayama's car being thrown into the air. Luca Badour's car shooting out to the side and then recrossing. They sort of cross paths once again as Katayama's car comes back to the left, Luca Badour's car to the right.
And that was a very, very unpleasant experience, because when the car went upside down, it ended up hitting the ground twice in the course of that roll. Now, the rollover bar, the safety rollover bar, is designed by regulation to ensure that the driver's head is below it. There's got to be a line drawn between that and a further rollover hoop on the top of the dash, so the driver's head should at all times never get into contact. But of course, in incidents like that, into soft ground, it is possible.
Well, Yukio Katayama has now been removed from the car, and of course they would have been very, very careful as they removed him in case of any neck injury, and the medical teams all in attendance very quickly, as you said, John. This is quite a narrow start straight. We crossed it yesterday, we walked across on our way out, and it did strike me that there's not a great deal of width here, and once you get into that mid part, let's just take another look.
Well, there's the aerial view from the helicopter. You see, I wonder, was that the Minardi that tipped the Tyrrell, or was it the Tyrrell came across the front of the Minardi? We can't tell. The picture isn't clear enough. But that incident, very, very vicious, the way the car whipped from spin to spin, turning over all the time, and then ending up upside down. The Minardi off on the right there. You see the car.
Так вот, несмотря на то, что появился модернизированный Вильямс, модернизированный Макларен, чуть-чуть усовершенствованный Бенеттон, тем не менее перед стартом сегодня Вильямс вернулся к прежнему исполнению своих машин в интересах надежности. Что касается автомобилей Макларен, они тоже перебрали свои машины и привели их в соответствие с тем уровнем, который был на прошлом этапе.
Start of the Grand Prix, and it's only a little way away now. They're due to set off on their formation lap in just over a minute's time, so we should be seeing the grid clearing soon, but I would have thought we would have seen it cleared already, so they may be delaying the restart once again. We were given a restart time, but it's now disappeared once more, so perhaps it's taking them a little longer to clear up the mess from the accident involving Ukio Katayama.
Well, I think the amount of liquids, particularly oil and water, as we mentioned, that was on the right-hand side of the track, just about 150, 200 yards past the front row of the grid. That, I think, officials will want to guarantee is clear. And also great care taken that there are no little sharp shards of carbon fiber or metal or any other material on the track that could prove damaging to a tyre. So care taken. Now the grid is being cleared, and very shortly we'll see this Portuguese Grand Prix for the second time getting underway.
So the cars again getting fired up and about to set off on this second formation lap.
Well, Ben, we just had some good news there come into the commentary booth. In fact, Ukio Katayama is conscious and he's talking to the doctor, but obviously he's going to be taken away to the medical centre for a very thorough examination. But that's great news for all the fans of Ukio Katayama, for Ukio himself, Tyrrell's Yamaha team, and I think a lot of people will feel a lot easier with that news.
Absolutely, and let's wish Ukio well and hope that he recovers quickly. There's a race next weekend, so let's hope that he can recover quickly enough to take part in the European Grand Prix at the Nürburgring next weekend. Away we go then on the second formation lap.
Heinz Harald Svensson has had a problem. His Cyber Ford has either stalled and somebody directly behind him. Let's have a look and see who that is. It's maybe Jean Alesi, in fact, in the Ferrari now. And again, I think we may well see again, look at the engineers trying to get that engine fired up. Now, Alesi got trapped behind Svensson. What will happen now? Ordinarily, you will not be allowed to take your place on the grid. You will have to start at the back of the grid. But Jean Alesi, unfortunately, got trapped behind that stalled Cyber Ford. He will try and make his way up the grid, but from my knowledge, if you don't move forward from your start position, you're not allowed to make up positions.
That's a tricky one, and the team manager at Ferrari, they'll be busily researching their rules and regulations at the moment to see what the situation is there. For Heinz Harald Svensson, I would have thought it was more clear-cut because he was the one that stalled, and he would have to start at the back.
Yes, I think that is clearly the case. But once again, you know, a team and a driver starting near to the front, is that pressure? Is that the result of being maybe too eager, or some of the engineers not quite maybe getting the engine started up as quickly as those around? One of the problems you have on a grid, and it's one I used to hate, is that you don't want to start your engine up too quickly, because then you may sit in the heat and overheat. On the other hand, if you wait until the last minute, it's hard to hear your engine running, and you have to be able to feel it and pick it up as well. So maybe it was simply a case of that, or worse, maybe a little bit of vaporization.
Well, it looks as though that was Frentzen moving his way up. He has moved his way up. Now, this is interesting. It doesn't look as though he's happy to start at the back of the grid. He's definitely going back to his position. 5th place, remember, his best qualifying performance of this year, and one of his best ever. And Frentzen determined not to let that go. But whether he will be allowed to take that, or whether he'll then have to come in for a penalty, well, we'll have to wait and see. They're coming out of the final corner. Little wiggle from LAC.
Yes, indeed. So, real drama here in Estoril this weekend. And Heinz-Harald Frentzen, there we see on the left, on the right of the circuit, left of your screen, he is going to have to start at the very back. And I'm sure that the team, in fact, would have radioed him and told him not to overtake. Now, he did overtake, in fact, on that lap, but the team probably got it under check, and hopefully he's okay. Jean Alesi, he came up onto position, and of course he was not blamed in that incident at all.
The second start then of the Portuguese Grand Prix. We've been here once before that nasty accident. Let's hope that we can get the race underway safely this time then. Coulthard and Hill on the front row to do battle into the first corner. Coulthard got it right the first time. Can he get it right the second time? It's a good start once again from the Scot. Damon Hill in second place. Michael Schumacher in third alongside Damon Hill.
And a great start from Johnny Herbert in the second of the two Benetton winners. But look at the traffic jam as we go into the first corner.
As Schumacher's gone into second, Schumacher got past Damon Hill. Now that is a key moment. Schumacher's got past Hill. It's Coulthard from Schumacher, from Hill, then Gerhard Berger, with Johnny Herbert next up by the looks of things. And I think Jean Alesi's made a good start, because he's right behind Johnny Herbert. Then it's Martin Brundle, Eddie Irvine and Rubens Barrichello.
Well, another magic start from the young Scot, but Michael Schumacher directly behind him on the grid got the advantage on the cleaner line on the circuit. Damon Hill's course starting on the right-hand side, not quite as clean, did not get the grip, the traction off the line, and Michael Schumacher was just mercurial the way he took second place away from Damon. And Damon said, okay guys, first corner, first lap, race part 2, I'm not going to argue with you at this stage.
The two Jordan Peugeots doing battle. They've got Mark Blundell and Mika Hakkinen right behind them. So the two Jordans and the two McLarens running together. But that was a good start from Alesi. Obviously had the advantage because he had a space ahead of him anyway, where Heinz-Harald Frentzen should have been. And of course Frentzen now will have to keep an eye on his progress, because this could be one of the drives of the race starting from the back of the grid.
But there must be a broken-hearted Heinz-Harald Frentzen who finds himself stalled on the grid and had to make his way all the way back to the rear of the grid. But look at the gap that has been opened up by David Coulthard, 1.2 seconds faster on that opening lap than second place Michael Schumacher.
Superb opening lap from Coulthard, and very much what we saw in the early stages at Monza. Although first lap at Monza he was being a little more careful because he was in the spare car. This time he's in his own race car. He knows it well from all of the qualifying and the warm-up session this morning, and he's feeling confident. He's pulling away.
And as these first three Renault-powered cars that are pulling away from Gerhard Berger and the Ferrari 4, and the battle for the lead will be between these three. Damon Hill appears to be closing up onto the rear of Michael Schumacher, but I think what Schumacher will do in this first leg of this Grand Prix is not push very hard. He's going to try and conserve. He's not going to force the issue. He hasn't got the lead, so he will try to consolidate, and by doing that he wants to make sure that Damon Hill remains behind him. When they get into their pit stops and decide how they want to see this race unfold, you will see much more of a race from Michael Schumacher.
So Coulthard leads from Schumacher and Hill, and let's just tell you, Heinz-Harald Frentzen had a superb opening lap. Remember, he had to start at the back. He came round at the end of the first lap in 14th position.
Well, that's a pretty fired up Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Of course, progress getting past the slower cars is relatively easy, but here in Estoril, overtaking by definition is always difficult. So Heinz-Harald, I think, might have taken a few risks, maybe shut his eyes a couple of times, but he's got through to 14th, and that was at the end of the first lap. We look to see any further progress on the second lap, and he's up one place. He's put his teammate Jean-Christophe Pouliot down to 14th, Frentzen 13th.
Look at the gap that Coulthard's opening up, 2.0 seconds at the end of the second lap, and Schumacher and Hill behind, and he really is storming away up front.
Ben, I put that down to one reason. Well, there are many, but the one is those brand new set of tyres. The performance that David Coulthard will get out of those tyres in these early laps is what we are seeing here. Now, those tyres will then begin to stabilise, and I would think that the gap there between David Coulthard and Michael Schumacher will again settle down. It may start to increase by literally thousands or at most tenths of seconds, but these tyres are good for about 3 laps of this kind of motoring. Then he'll be at the same situation everyone else is.
But at the moment he's making the best use of it, and we've got some funny information coming through on our screen at the moment. But David Coulthard with that gap, it'll reduce slightly as you can see at the second checkpoint. But if anything, I think Coulthard's still pulling away. Let's see what the gap is this time as he comes across the line. He sets both of the fastest laps so far. Across the line he goes again, 23.418. Just a couple of tenths slower that time. Schumacher behind, 2.6 seconds. So yes, he's still opening up the gap. Hill in third position, chasing after his great rival. Then Gerhard Berger, Johnny Herbert and Jean Alesi. But quite a gap, as you can see from those times, between Damon Hill and Gerhard Berger.
Further down the field, another man and team that were in all sorts of trouble this weekend, Mika Häkkinen. Well, the McLaren Mercedes-Benz, Mika Häkkinen in 10th place. He's ahead of teammate Mark Blundell, but Mika Häkkinen has got the Monza spec McLaren Mercedes-Benz, whereas Mark Blundell has got a mix and match of the parts that they have here, and really not entirely happy that he can't run as competitively as his teammate.
So, as you say, Häkkinen in 10th. Frentzen, by the way, is up to 13th. He just passed his teammate Jean-Christophe Pouliot on that last lap, but progress now will start to get very tough. He's just behind Olivier Panis, who's the next target, and then he joins in the battle with the two McLarens. But we're on board with Damon Hill chasing after Michael Schumacher, and let's just see if we get any idea of the relative performance of the two cars. They're lapping very closely together, within a tenth of a second on the last lap.
But what we are looking at from Damon Hill's onboard camera is a revised Benetton and if you like to call it a standardized Williams. That's the Williams that was raced in Monza. The Benetton has changed. They've got a revision to the front suspension. They got revisions to the front aerodynamics. So the balance in terms of performance is actually closer than we saw in qualifying.
Taking a look at Gerhard Berger running in fourth position, quite some way back, but he's got a bit of a gap over Johnny Herbert in fifth place, and then the second of the Ferraris in sixth.
Looking further down, we just see again a battle that we haven't had a chance to see, but I can assure you will be tight, because Rubens Barrichello and the Jordan Peugeot has got Mika Häkkinen all over him like a rash. 0.3 of a second is the time across the line, and a further, well, just under a second is Mark Blundell, and he's got Olivier Panis over him, and then there's Heinz-Harald Frentzen trying to find a way to go from 13th up to 9th, and that's a battle I wish we could get sight of, because watching Ferraris running around on the road is great if you're a Ferrari fan, but there's a real race going on out there, and we're not getting to see it.
Well, hopefully we'll get a chance to have a look soon. Gerhard Berger sliding. Look at the slide he's getting already in this early stage of the race, and those rear tyres are taking a fair old hammering. We're only 4 laps into this race.
Well, hammering is what the tyres will take, and we project 3 pit stops for the teams at the front. But in fact, it's been said that some teams might even, not a question of wish, but need to stop more than that.
The question is, will Schumacher decide to do the same? He seemed to run quite heavy this morning in the warm-up. He was quite far off the pace, so it's possible that perhaps he might go for 2 stops, in which case he's doing a pretty good job, because he's only 3.6 seconds behind David Coulthard at this point. But that remains to be seen. Gerhard Berger, he is some 5 seconds behind Damon Hill now. That really is quite a big gap. He's trying to look out for that battle further back, but can't quite see it at the moment. But it's all still fairly close in the battle for those final positions in the top 10.
Looking at Michael Schumacher, or looking at Gerhard Berger as we are on screen, but what Benetton do when they set out their race plans, they know that the result only comes on the last lap. It doesn't necessarily affect what you do in this first segment before you have your first stop. In the past, we've seen Benetton with the ability to go longer than other teams because they have the opportunity to carry more fuel. Now, teams in the pit lane say that only works if you're doing 1 or 2 stops, but if you're going beyond that, then in fact carrying more may well be different, and you have to then think on your feet, and that's really the strength that the Benetton Renault team have had over the past 2 seasons. It also needs a driver who can work within those confines, and Schumacher is constantly on the telephone to the team, and they're talking to him.
Well, we just saw the news that Olivier Panis has picked up a 10-second penalty. He's running in 12th place, and I do believe that's about the 3rd time this year that he's jumped the jump start sensors on the start finish when they set off from the grid. Then they are checked. There's special electronic sensors that check when the car's moving. Olivier Panis has been caught again, and that 12th place that he has at the moment will be dropped down as he has to make a pit stop 10 seconds at the end of the pit lane and then back out once again.
And of course, in those pit stops, you're not allowed to come in, change tyres, put fuel in. You've got to come in, serve your penalty at the pit lane exit, then go back out, and that 10-second penalty, you can add on approximately a further maybe 15 or so seconds for the time spent coming in, getting down to speed, getting all the way down the pit lane, and then back out. So in reality, it's close to half a minute. Remember the time that you might lose getting back out all adds up, and it's a severe penalty.
Indeed, the way into the pit lane here is not too tortuous, but what you've got to bear in mind is they're coming out of a very fast corner, so they have to lose an awful lot of speed as they come into the pit. So in terms of an overall lap, they lose a lot of time.
Well, cars are getting up to 310 or so kilometres per hour before they brake. And even at start-finish line, Damon Hill was doing 301 kilometres per hour in qualifying.
Still the battle then for second place between Michael Schumacher and Damon Hill, but up front David Coulthard putting in another superb performance. We saw it at Spa in the initial part of the race when it was dry. He retired, went out of the race with a problem before the rain had even come down. Then at Monza we saw again him managing to pull away from everybody else, only for a wheel bearing failure to put him out, but he leads at the end of 7 laps.
Well, there are the respective best laps of first and second. But again, let's go down the field because Barrichello on 9, Hakkinen 10, Mark Blundell 11, Panis 13, so he's going to be in the pits, as is Pedro Lamy, and Heinz-Harald Frentzen there are still squabbling away. Now for Frentzen, that's a result from heaven because Panis would have been hard to pass. Frentzen got up to Panis quite easily, but that's where his progress stopped. Now he's got an opportunity to have a go at Mark Blundell, and he will have the momentum to carry him up and might find a way past Mark Blundell, assuming that Mark is unable to get on to that long straight as quick as the Frentzen Sauber.
Pedro Lamy in the pits, as you can see, and that's a great disappointment. What a shame for the Portuguese driver. A lot of fans supporting him here, of course, today in the driver's parade. He went round early and he was getting a tremendous reception, and it's just such a disappointment to see him. Well, I think I can see a few people clapping out there. I wondered if he was going to be getting back out, but I don't think so.
I think he was being applauded just for his efforts, and he's out of his car, and that's a very short end to a day for Pedro Lamy and the tens of thousands of Portuguese Grand Prix fans. And this is the biggest crowd I've seen in Estoril, I think, probably in all the time I've come here. It's massive.
Jean-Denis Delatraz has been lapped already. He is the blue car there, the Pacific Ford, having his debut with that team. He raced in Adelaide last year, but he's more of a sports car driver. Has raced in Formula 3000 quite a lot, but a bit of a baptism again here at Estoril, but he kept out of the way, and the two battling for second place have managed to get through safely. But up front it's still David Coulthard. We haven't seen a lot of him in the last lap or two, but he's coming up to complete 9 laps out of this 71-lap Grand Prix, and had an advantage of 4.4 seconds last time round, and at the moment he's extending that lead virtually every lap. But the top 3 now lapping more or less at the same sort of pace.
And that's again a function of those round black bits of vital equipment, Goodyear's B compound tire. That is dictating now the pace at which this race is being run. But of course, as David Coulthard had the advantage, he did start on new tires. He used that advantage very, very well indeed. And he's opened up almost a 5-second advantage over Michael Schumacher, who no doubt in my mind is delaying the progress of Damon Hill. But you're at Estoril, passing is difficult, and if you don't take or make the opportunities for yourself, that's what you can expect.
A little bit of dirt or a little bit of chalk virtually by the curb there that David Coulthard ran over, nothing too serious. And he has virtually a 5-second lead over Schumacher and Hill.
Это был 84 год. Правда, тогда, в том 84 году, Бергер провел всего лишь 4 гонки, а англичанин Брандл 7. Ну, а третью позицию в этом своеобразном списке занимает Джонни Херберт, на его счету 75 гонок. Правда, если сравнивать возраст участников, то самым старым пилотом, среди вышедших сегодня на старт, является пилот команды Форти Корса Роберто Морено. Но, правда, он не намного старше Бергера и Брандла, всего на несколько месяцев. Правда, на счету Морено всего лишь 37 проведенных гран-при. И опять же, подчеркиваю, что мы не учитываем нынешнюю гонку. Но вот интересная особенность. Если Брандл за свою карьеру успел поездить в 7 командах, а Бергер в 5, то Роберто Морено, который дебютировал в Формуле-1 в 1987 году, за эти годы успел сменить аж 8 команд. Плюс к тому же в 2 командах он успел побыть тест-пилотом. Но если, скажем, с командой Феррари у него действительно был контракт тест-пилота, то в Макларене он провел всего лишь, если я не ошибаюсь, один тест-заезд, но тем не менее. Ну вот вы видите, самый пожилой пилот чемпионата Формулы-1 Роберто Морено тоже, по всей видимости, эту гонку закончил. Ну, а тем временем Демон Хилл чуть ближе подобрался к Михаэлю Шумахеру.
Welcome back to Estoril, and at last Olivier Panis has come in to take his 10-second stop and go.
And you can see how heavily that Mugen Honda engine was breathing. But of course, Olivier Panis probably had the thing chiming away around about 15,000 revs, waiting to be able to drop the clutch to get back in. And I'm sure his frustration can only be within his own hands, because I think it's the third time we've seen the Frenchman violate that stop-go penalty, or the jump-start penalty. Team's still unhappy, because they say that even if a car rolls backwards rather than rolls forward, it triggers the mechanism. I think the key is you've got to have a handbrake in the car, make sure you keep it on until that light goes to green, release it. And in fact, you might think that's a joke, but in Spa, there was a rumour that Benetton and other teams had fitted some form of manual restraint, because that start is on a upslope, and the last thing you want to do is roll back. There's one of those, look and see who that is, but that's the Pacific. No, it's not.
It is Olivier Panis in the Ligier. He's just come out of the pits and he's lost it.
Well, that is probably just down to temper and petulance, as Olivier Panis, in sheer frustration, just lost the back of the car, and I think he will get a severe talking to from team boss Tom Wolfenshaw, because that appears to be just over-exuberance. Of course, going back out onto the circuit, he would have gone across the dirty line, but nonetheless, as a Grand Prix driver, that seems a somewhat elementary error on the part of Olivier Panis.
So not a good weekend for him. His teammate, by the way, Martin Brundle, is down in 7th place. Let's just quickly remind you, Coulthard has a 5.7-second lead after 11 laps of the Portuguese Grand Prix. Schumacher and Hill, we're looking at the moment, still battling for 2nd place. Then Gerhard Berger, Johnny Herbert, and Jean Alesi, as you can see, are there on the caption in 6th place. Then Martin Brundle in 7th, chased by Eddie Irvine, Rubens Barrichello, Mika Hakkinen in 10th, then Mark Blundell 11th, and Heinz-Harald Frentzen, he's in 12th.
Well, we're on lap 13, and looking forward to pit stops if they're going to come. It's going to be in about a few laps' time for those choosing to go the 3-stop way. So I just wonder whether Michael Schumacher, and the pace that he is running at, may have decided to try and do something different.
Well, we shall soon find out. It's likely if they're on a 3-stop to be stopping around lap 18, but that is a very rough guide. As we've seen Benetton do in the past, they don't always split the race into nice, even portions. They like to do a longer stop and then a shorter one and sort of mix things up a little bit.
And the reason they can do that is, as I mentioned earlier, they can carry more fuel, I think, than any other car currently in Grand Prix racing. They designed it that way, and I think, in fact, for 1996, when everybody yet again has got to make a new chassis, primarily for safety grounds, to give the driver more protection and strength around the cockpit area itself, but also taking that into account, I think a number of teams are going to up the tank capacity on what they have this year, and that then gives everybody, again, this flexibility and therefore advantage that Benetton have enjoyed all year.
Well, we're looking a little bit further down the field now. This is Mika Häkkinen battling with Rubens Barrichello.
And it's taken the director a long time to waken up to the fact that there is a battle going on. So Rubens Barrichello has got Mika Häkkinen 0.3 of a second there, you can see on screen. Look at Barrichello, the tail swings out under power, and Mika Häkkinen's got Mark Blundell breathing down his neck and finds Harold Frentzen. He's actually dropped back a little bit from the tail of the second of the McLaren Mercedes-Benz. But Häkkinen in MP410, the B version. There's the battle, 5 cars thrashing away. And Eddie Irvine now drawing further away from his teammate, Rubens Barrichello, and running fairly free, but some distance behind. 7th place, Martin Brundle.
Good battle this one then. Barrichello, Häkkinen, Mark Blundell, Heinz Harold Frentzen, and then Jean-Christophe Bouillon. Häkkinen just has a little look just to say, hey, watch out Rubens, I'm going to take advantage if I can. Barrichello soon shut that door, didn't give him the opportunity to go through, but there you can see Blundell's got to watch out because Frentzen's right behind.
Again, Rubens Barrichello, he tends to prefer to do fewer pit stops rather than the multiple pit stops. I suspect that Barrichello is going to try and go for 2, and in reality, what we're seeing is what we see further up the field, and that is he can run no quicker, but nobody is quick enough to find a way past. And all Barrichello has to do is just very carefully always place his car in the way of anybody chasing him, and they therefore are down to the pace Barrichello runs at, and of course they have to protect their tail likewise, because there are 5 cars in this group.
Well, look at that pass. Frentzen's got past Mark Blundell. Frentzen somehow managed to squeeze through there.
Yes, but he also compromised himself, and Mark Blundell would try and recover, but he didn't. Frentzen has taken away 11th place, and now expect to see the young German make his way as quickly as he can up to the tail of the young Finn, that's being Mika Häkkinen. So Frentzen, having made a wonderful start, having had to start at the back and then get trapped behind Olivier Panis, is once again slowly but surely edging his way forward.
Well, he's had a few battles with Mark Blundell in the last 2 races, both at Monza and Spa. They both ended up fairly close to each other. Frentzen had the advantage in both of those races, of course going on to take 3rd last race out, and Mark finished in 4th there.
Yes, Mark Blundell mentioned this morning that with this mix and match of development parts and well-proven tried parts, that he's struggling once the tyre wear starts to increase, and he's just losing grip. So I suspect, in fact, what happened was Frentzen just simply had more grip at that part of the circuit, and he just took the dive down the inside. In doing so, Mark Blundell could not respond. Frentzen took the place.
So Barrichello versus Häkkinen still at the lead of this group. This is a battle for 9th place at the moment. But of course, this could well be a battle for points later in the race. There's still a long, long way to go. What a tough race this one at Estoril. Frentzen now, though, has closed right up to Mika Häkkinen. Certainly good on the brakes into that section.
And appears to have a better balance and grip than Mika Häkkinen. So watch Frentzen. He'll not want to get caught behind Mika Häkkinen, who is not easy to overtake. Frentzen will see that Rubens Barrichello a little bit ahead of Mika Häkkinen. So there 4 or 5 cars onto the straight, but the gap really remains the same. The problem that Frentzen faces is that he is the quickest of that bunch of 5 cars. He's in that long, long right-hand corner. He can't get too close too early because he'll lose front-end grip, because Mika Häkkinen's car ahead will disturb the air over those front aerofoils, and in effect what'll happen is he will lose steering effort.
Let's just remind you, Coulthard still leads. We've had 15 laps now here at Estoril, 4.8 seconds, so the gap has become a little bit more constant now, but of course they're dealing with traffic, so that makes a difference. Schumacher and Hill still battling for second.
Yes, and Frentzen, in fact, on that last lap recorded his quickest race lap, so an indication that that Cyber Ford capable of running very quickly indeed, but he's getting trouble finding a way past these 2 cars.
4th place is Gerhard Berger behind the 3 Renault-powered cars. 5th position still is Johnny Herbert running up there with John Lacey behind him, but the gap between Johnny Herbert and John Lacey something like 2.8 seconds. And look at that, Barrichello sliding there.
Yeah, he's got little or no grip whatsoever. Mika Häkkinen scrabbling for grip, but this is all playing into the hands of Heinz Harold Frentzen. who's sitting back watching it. But of course, with Frentzen or with Hakkinen going one way, Barrichello the other way, look at the way the cars soar and swing from left to right across the circuit.
Tremendous battle, this one. Rubens Barrichello now. Is Mika Hakkinen close enough to pick up the slipstream? Can he dive down the inside? It's the first corner. This is the main overtaking spot. Hakkinen goes for it down the inside and takes the place.
Great overtake from Mika Hakkinen. He's worked very hard to get into position. He got himself into perfect position around that long right-hand corner. He used the slipstream from Barrichello's Jordan Peugeot. Let's look at it again from the head-on shot. Absolutely perfect. If you want to see a copybook overtaking manoeuvre, you got it from Mika Hakkinen.
Superb stuff, and it was interesting. Mark Blundell actually was quite close behind Frentzen at that point.
And Rubens Barrichello now, I think, going to be great pressure from Heinz-Harald Frentzen. He also will look to shoot down. Here's the other alternate overtaking spot in Estoril. Frentzen not close enough. Rubens Barrichello will be on his guard, but the problem for Barrichello began a little bit further on. Just we come out of this long uphill right-hand corner, then into a much tighter flick to the right, and it was here where it all started to ebb away for Barrichello. And there Frentzen locks up, scrabbles, and we saw him do the same to Mark Blundell, and again compromises Barrichello totally. Mark Blundell, and I'm losing. So Frentzen now up into 10th place.
Yes, indeed. In fact, Jean-Christophe Bouillon had almost had the chance to get past Mark Blundell because he'd in turn been slowed down by Barrichello going slow, and that's all a sort of concertina effect.
So a real race from the German, and he's now made his way almost to the head of this group of 5 cars. He started his race behind them because of that problem on the original grid. So now Mika Hakkinen will be quickly reeled in, but again finding a way past the Finn, no easy task. Mark Blundell also looks for a way around Brazilian Rubens Barrichello as he battles to find grip. So, presuming that Barrichello is on 2 stops, his tyres at this point probably not much grip left.
So, Mika Hakkinen now in 9th place, Frentzen 10th, and we've got somebody coming to the pits. It looks as though it could be Schumacher. It is Michael Schumacher into the pit.
And Damon Hill in behind him. So, 2nd and 3rd in the pits. Now, the race is amongst the team. There we see, there's the Williams, the wheel goes on. And timing, well, we've got Hill there, the times are Schumacher out. Look at that, 7.4. Phenomenal pit stop. Damon Hill still in the pits. 14, 15, 16. What has gone wrong for Damon Hill? Looks like left rear didn't get off, and that is disaster for the Brit in 3rd place. Now dropping down Gerhard Berger in for the first of his, or exiting after the first of his stops. But what disaster for the Williams team and for Damon Hill. Martin Brundle in the remaining Liège in, and again left front being troublesome. 10.1 seconds. He lost maybe a little over 2 seconds because of that left front.
So David Coulthard has not yet been into the pits. Are we going to see him come in? He's coming round to complete the 19 laps this time.
But can the team guarantee they get him in, get him out? He's coming in. David Coulthard on lap 19 is in for the first time. The team will have recovered from that setback with Damon Hill. Whether it was a problem with an air gun, whether it was a problem with a nut, whether it was the relocking device you must fit. This is the offending wheel that was on Damon Hill's car. It appears to go on cleanly this time. So good stop for David Coulthard, but not a fuel, putting in more fuel than Benetton. That was a short fuel stop for Michael Schumacher because it is the fuel flow rate around 9 litres per second that determines the length of a pit stop. So Benetton have taken the lead of this Grand Prix by the time everybody gets around to their first stops, because they were in and out in under 8 seconds. A massive advantage going to Benetton.
So Coulthard back out onto the circuit. Into the pits has come Johnny Herbert now. Remember, he was in 5th place before coming into the pit lane. And so are we seeing another rapid stop? Yes, pretty rapid, 8.2 seconds. 2 blinding stops from Benetton. Herbert and Schumacher in and out in around 8 seconds. And again, the amount of fuel, that hose was only in for about 7 seconds. So you're looking at a little over 60 litres of fuel going in. So they're not going to be on the track that long. But it has given, I believe, Schumacher the option and advantage. Now this is for Schumacher, and conditions like this
is just fantastic. He will use his opportunity absolutely to the maximum, and I think probably he is the only driver who actually truly understands the art of making a pit stop strategy come to you.
So the first series of stops, which make it look as though most people will be going for 3 stops here at Estoril. And there you can see, in fact, Coulthard is still in front, but the gap 4.2 seconds from Michael Schumacher. So although that slightly longer stop from Coulthard, you can see Schumacher behind him there. Schumacher still in second position. Third place has come now Jean Alesi, with Damon Hill after that disastrous stop dropping down into 4th position.
Well, looks like I got it wrong in terms of who was going to lead the race after the first round, but Schumacher's car clearly has got less fuel on board. We don't know how much fuel, though it does have in that fuel tank.
The question is, what they may have done is to put more fuel at the beginning of the race, and therefore they didn't have to put so much fuel in that first stop.
Got it and run.
So we shall wait and see whether that actually works well for him. It may well do, but of course he's still got a bit of a gap between him and Coulthard. Into the pits comes Mika Häkkinen now. Häkkinen had worked his way up into 10th place, remember, in that battle with Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Roberto Moreno's in the pits at the same time, hence the clock is running on the right-hand side of your screen. Quite a lot of fuel going into that car, an 11.2 second stop.
It looks around about 80 litres of fuel went in, and Häkkinen back out. Heinz-Harald Frentzen, of course, will have to make his stop, so good work from the McLaren team. Sauber men now are going to have to do their bit. But of course, Sauber, if you look back to their days in sports car racing, they know all about strategy, they know all about getting fuel in. So Frentzen will rely on the experience from Sauber to get him in and out, and hopefully, from their point of view, do it ahead of Mika Häkkinen.
So Jean Alesi's come up into 3rd place, but he's not stopped yet. That's interesting. The Ferrari of Alesi not having made it stop. You can see it in the background, not coming in this time. He's under pressure now from Damon Hill. Hill, after that slow stop, trying to find a way past the Ferrari.
With more fuel on board, but with much, much fresher tyres, and therefore capable of lapping a lot quicker than the Frenchman.
So are we going to see Hill find a way past? He didn't get past on that run down the start-finish straight. That's the clearest overtaking place here.
Just an indication of how much those fresh tyres are worth. Damon Hill's last lap was 2 seconds faster than the Frenchman in the Ferrari.
But he's got to now try and make that advantage pay off for him and get past Alesi as fast as possible. Otherwise, losing time behind the Frenchman is going to cost dear in terms of a race result.
The Ferrari, you could see, could out-accelerate Damon Hill. That's the difference in weight between a fairly full Williams and an almost empty Ferrari.
So this is going to be a challenge for Hill now to try and find a way past. They're both coming up to lap Luca Badoa, running in the spare car after the accident with Ukio Katayama at the first start of this Portuguese Grand Prix. Hill as close as ever. We saw him overtake here last year past David Coulthard, but not close enough to get down the inside. And into the pits has come Mika Salo in the second, or the only running now, Tyrrell Yamaha in this race. Fair bit of fuel going on board by the looks of things. Oh, don't move until you're told, Mika. Almost a bit of movement too early.
Almost a dangerous situation because the fuel hose was still in the locked position in the fuel tank. So, well, that was simply a dragging clutch or just over expectations on the part of Mika Salo. The Tyrrell men got him stopped and got that fuel hose disconnected. Then off you go. Alesi trying to find a way past Luca Badoa as they turn in, and Badoa just shuts the Badoa as he goes into turn 1. Alesi off the power. He wanted to keep that minority forward between himself and Damon Hill. This is a race for position, but of course Alesi has not yet made his first stop.
That won't do Luca Badoa's chances of being the second driver at Ferrari much good. Possible Italian chance of driving alongside Schumacher. Ferrari due to test several Italians this coming week, but they wouldn't have been too pleased about that. But in the end he gets past, and Marc Blundell comes into the pits for his stop now. Blundell was running in 11th place. So the McLaren crew go to work. Let's see if we can get some idea how much fuel they're putting in. Again, a lot more than the Benetton crew had to with Schumacher, but a little slow getting the hose away.
Yeah, but about the same amount of fuel, I would say. Around about 80, 85 litres will have gone in. But Damon Hill really getting bogged down behind Jean Alesi. He's got to be a more aggressive and more fight driver. You know, Alesi's not going to move over in a battle for position. Alesi, again, notoriously hard to pass. But Damon Hill has to use the strength that his car has, and those strengths wear grip, but he's wasting it by the corner and letting Alesi gain advantage. Now, the places to pass here in Estoril are down at the end of the long straight, but you've got to position yourself precisely. Alesi's car, being lighter, will accelerate quicker. Damon Hill's got more grip, so he theoretically can come off that corner quicker, but the advantage still lies with Alesi.
So an interesting battle this one, but Damon Hill having a tough weekend, tough race so far in the pits there. Japanese driver Taki Inoue in the footwear cars. He had a spin earlier in the race, rejoined the actions, running down in 15th place at the moment. So Coulthard leads with a 5.7-second advantage from Michael Schumacher. Then there's a 15-second gap to this battle between Alesi and Hill for third place. Berger and Irvine, the other two in the top six.
And there Heinz-Harald Frentzen in for his first stop. So Frentzen down in 10th, Jude coming into the pits, 10-second stop, clean in, clean out, but back to this battle for third place between Alesi and Damon Hill, and really the frustration Damon Hill must now be going through. Only a racing driver will know, and it looks to me like Alesi may well be trying to decide not to do 3 stops. He may be trying to get away with 2.
Yes, indeed. He hasn't been into the pits at all yet, and we're now on lap 24, so we would expect a 2-stop strategy to be coming in around this time, so perhaps we'll see Alesi coming in either this lap. Yes, indeed, he comes in. Into the pits comes Jean Alesi. Alesi coming into the pit lane from third place. That means that Damon Hill now moves into third position, but he may still be able to come out well in the top 6. The gap between him, well, Gerhard Berger probably will move up past him, and Eddie Irvine will probably be quite close to him as he comes back out. Let's wait and see. Quick stop from Ferrari, or are we going to see any problems? No, it's a good one. 9-10 seconds, 10.1, one of the fastest we've seen, and Alesi rejoins, but Coulthard still leads in Portugal.
Нам сейчас показывает Хилла. Да, нам показывает Демона Хилла, он идет на 3-й позиции. Хотелось бы, чтобы все-таки показали и лидеров Кулхарда и Шумахера. Ну вот, нам показали, компьютер нам показывает отрыв между пилотом команды Уильямсом Дэвидом Кулхардом и чемпионом мира Михаэлем Шумахером. Если Хилл сдерживал себя, сейчас вокруг него свободно, круговых нет, значит, надо сейчас попытаться отрыв как-то сократить. Тот отрыв, который нарастил Шумахер. Если действительно в самом деле все так складывается. Ну что ж, я думаю, что немножечко ситуация в гонке как бы устоялась. Я хочу предложить вниманию поклонникам автоспорта, нашим телезрителям. Надеюсь, что среди них много тех, кто принимает участие в нашем конкурсе «Крутой вираж». И вот я хочу предложить их вниманию на такой своеобразный, скажем, реестр победителей нашего прошлого этапа. Тех, кто правильно ответил на вопросы нашего прошлого этапа, на вопрос, который задавался во время прямой трансляции из Италии, Гран-при Италии с трассы в Монце. Посмотрите имена победителей. Мы снова с вами на трассе Эштарил, на трассе, где проходит Гран-при Португалии, 13-й этап чемпионата мира в классе машин Формула-1. Я напоминаю, что вы смотрите прямую трансляцию этого этапа, организованную творческим объединением «Арена» российского телевидения и фирмой «Самипа» из Монте-Карло. На ваших экранах Джонни Херберт, второй пилот команды Беннеттон. Пока что Херберт занимает 5-е место. И напомню, что после 26 кругов гонку возглавляет Дэвид Кулхард. Дэвид Кулхард, который на 6,5 секунд опережает
Portugal, Johnny Herbert, you're looking at the moment. He runs in 5th position, but it's David Coulthard leading here at Estoril with a 6.5 second advantage over Michael Schumacher. Damon Hill in 3rd place. He's got himself past John Alesi, but he's 17 seconds behind Schumacher. A lot of work to do here now after that. A slow first pit stop. Gerhard Berger's 4th. Johnny Herbert 5th, as I say, and John Alesi now in 6th place.
Well, John Alesi came into the pits. Damon Hill's next lap was almost 3 seconds faster than he'd been running behind Alesi. That's the time that Damon Hill lost. And of course, you've just got to force issues. And if you develop a reputation as not being a strong or an aggressive overtaker, people like Alesi are going to play on it to their own advantage, and that's just simply what happened.
So Herbert's there, as you see, he's got himself a 7-second advantage over Jean Alesi. Behind the top six, we've got Martin Brundle up into 7th place, and he's just ahead of Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Remember, he started from the back of the field, fighting his way through, and partly due to the pit stops and a good strong drive from Frentzen, he's got himself past Häkkinen as well, who, remember, he was battling with a little earlier in the race. So Frentzen 8th, Häkkinen 9th, and Barrichello 10th.
Yes, and that group again covered by about a second, those 4 cars, with Mika Häkkinen 0.3 of a second away from the gearbox of Heinz-Harald Frentzen.
And indeed, Marc Blundell is only a fraction behind Rubens Barrichello. So there's sort of the same 4 cars that we saw battling earlier. They're still all in a race of their own for 8th place at the moment.
Martin Brundle just under a second behind Jean Alesi in the last point scoring position, that's 6th. So Martin Brundle will look to have a go at Alesi, but we know Alesi hard as nails in a race situation. Late on the brakes, run you not off the track, but certainly run you right to the very edge of the track. Under brakes, but back to this little battle that's been going on throughout the Grand Prix and providing probably the greatest entertainment on the day.
So far, indeed, it's been an entertaining battle. This Rubens Barrichello there, just ahead still of Marc Blundell. So this a tight battle indeed. We saw Eddie Irvine come in a little while ago. He's dropped down to 12th position now, courtesy of his pit stop, and he's some 7 seconds behind this group. And there you can see the split time. We don't really need to see what it is. You can see it clearly enough with just how close these cars are running together. Frentzen with the slight advantage in the group. He's got himself 1.9 seconds ahead of Häkkinen. That's right behind Häkkinen, Rubens Barrichello and Marc Blundell.
And this is the part of the track that we saw overtaking from Frentzen. Look at Rubens Barrichello ran into the corner, had to take a wider arc. Marc Blundell tried to find a way through. Rubens very quickly defended. He just cut across the front of the second McLaren Mercedes-Benz and got away with it.
Just about, but they lost him some time from Mika Häkkinen. So Häkkinen's got himself a little further ahead now. Barrichello coming under increasing pressure from Marc Blundell, as meanwhile Heinz-Harald Frentzen lapping pretty quickly. Similar sort of times to Johnny Herbert at the moment. The 2 leaders up front, Coulthard and Schumacher, they're running in the 24s. They're the only 2 that are in the 1-minute 24s at this point. Traffic, of course, still affecting things. But with 29 laps completed, Coulthard with a 7-second advantage. He's putting in a superb performance here so far.
Look again, Barrichello under pressure from Marc Blundell, and as the Brazilian chucks the car in, they're suddenly getting attention from race leader David Coulthard. Coming up there, the 4th of those cars is the race leader, and with Marc Blundell, Rubens Barrichello all looking forward to Mika Häkkinen. They better be aware of race leader about to put them a lap down, and this is only in lap 30.
That's an incredible achievement. The fact that David Coulthard in the Williams Renault could be coming up to lap the likes of the Jordan and McLaren after just 29 laps of this race just gives you some idea of the performance that Williams Renault have got here and the performance of Coulthard.
But let's just watch how much time David Coulthard loses, because passing cars that are lapping 3 or 2 seconds a lap slower than you is very difficult. The same problem for Coulthard exists that applies to those cars ahead of him. Now, he's got an engine advantage, there's no doubt about that, but he can't get close enough on the exit of the corner to take advantage. He's trying to pick up a draft from Marc Blundell, but he's going to find it difficult. He's going to have to take a big lunge down the inside. He's going to do it. Is he going to do it? Well, he did get away with it, but only because of cooperation from Marc Blundell. Other drivers would have said, sorry, chap, and cut across the front of the race leader.
Blundell obviously aware that Coulthard was there just at the last moment and gave him space. So Coulthard lapped the first of this group.
And that was Coulthard relying upon Marc Blundell to assist him. He wasn't sure he was going to get it. Finally it was given, and then Coulthard could slide under him. But Coulthard didn't have the courage of his convictions at that point to force the issue, to assert himself wisely, in my view, as race leader at this point. He wouldn't have achieved anything, and he could have lost it all.
a 5.8 second lead over Michael Schumacher at the moment, so that's obviously something he's got to bear in mind. It's quite a comfortable cushion. Of course, Schumacher will have to fight his way past this traffic as well. But Schumacher, we know, always very quick at getting past slower cars, and that's where it could play to his advantage a little.
The reason he gets past cars quickly is because cars see him coming. Oops, Michael Schumacher, he's a good racer, a good overtaker. I'm not going to cause a big problem because I know this guy will be tough.
Yes, indeed. So, Coulthard, now let's watch him as he comes out of the long sweeping parabolica onto start-finish straight. Is he close enough to pick up the toe?
Well, he was quicker through the corner. You could see him gradually close down on the Brazilian. There is an illustration of how to overtake an Estoril. Do it perfectly, well planned and even better executed by David Coulthard. He had the speed over Barrichello through the corner, and he managed to maintain and pick up time all the way through. So when they got to the exit speed of Coulthard's Williams was probably maybe 5 to 8 miles an hour quicker than Barrichello, and that extra speed at that part of the circuit just will carry you past.
So he's got past the first two in that particular battle. The next one that he's going after is Mika Häkkinen. Häkkinen running in 9th place, so he's lapped everyone up to 10th now already, David Coulthard.
But Coulthard's lap time has dropped by about a second and a half, almost 2 seconds in his battle to get through this lap traffic. And in the meantime, Michael Schumacher now has reduced that gap between leader and second place down to 4.3 seconds. When Schumacher comes up to the job of getting past the Jordans and the McLarens, let's see whether the gap opens back up or whether Schumacher can make a better job other than race leader David Coulthard.
Meanwhile, in 3rd place, it's still Damon Hill. He's 17.5 seconds behind Schumacher, lapping at very much a similar pace to Schumacher, but it's not enough to close up that gap, and it really is proving to be difficult for him at the moment. Gerhard Berger still in 4th place, but he's 16 seconds behind Hill. Another 16 seconds to Johnny Herbert in 5th, and then another 6 seconds to John Alesi in 6th.
Last lap, 24.8 for David Coulthard against Mika Häkkinen, 26.0. So Coulthard took 1.2 seconds out of the gap between himself and Häkkinen, but now once he's behind him, he's going to find himself drifting back again. So the seesaw that we're seeing all around Estoril between race leader and second place is just ongoing and is again such a fundamental part of your race preparation. You've got to bear in mind you're going to get caught behind lap cars. It may happen in an easy part of the circuit, may happen in a difficult part of the circuit, but I can guarantee you it's going to happen.
Still likely to see 2 pit stops from the 2 front runners, and he goes past. That's good. Coulthard gets past. Slightly less usual place there.
Yes, and again, Mika Häkkinen cooperated. He didn't use what he might have done in a racing situation, pulled across the front of Coulthard. But when race leader comes up, it is part of etiquette of Grand Prix racing not to delay him. Mika Häkkinen knew that Williams Renault was over a second, probably almost 2 seconds faster in a lap. When the opportunity came, Häkkinen stayed left. He didn't lose any time, and he allowed the race leaders through, and they'll remain mates for another Grand Prix.
So Coulthard comes across the line. This to end the 33rd lap out of 71. We're just a little before half distance. Across the line he goes, and we should be able to see Michael Schumacher now.
Well, you can't, because he's under the rear wing of Barrichello's Jordan Peugeot. We saw him come down the straight. So Michael Schumacher, you could see only briefly, but he is close, and he's got vision of David Coulthard, and that, to a racing driver, is an enormous spur.
So Coulthard, having fought his way past the traffic, now it's down to Schumacher to do likewise. 4.8 seconds, the gap between these two, and still some way to go. With Hill, well, he closed up a little bit on the last lap as these cars have got themselves involved in traffic, but only fractions of a second. And we go on board with Michael Schumacher now as he works his way through this traffic as well.
And just interesting to watch the car now in a race configuration as opposed to when you're looking for those blinding qualifying laps. Looks very, very much easier. Gerhard Berger in for the second time. Just 9.5 seconds, but he's delayed in getting the car in motion again.
Quite an early second stop for Gerhard Berger this time around. So a little shorter distance he ran that time.
Race leader coming onto the start-finish straight, and he needs now with clear road ahead of him, although there is Heinz-Harald Frentzen. But in the gaps between the cars you're lapping and the cars you're going to lap, and now you can see Michael Schumacher has got past Rubens Barrichello. He's only got Mika Häkkinen between himself and David Coulthard. And I wonder, will Häkkinen be as generous to Schumacher as he was to the race leader?
Interesting, the gap, as you saw on screen, was 4.8 seconds, but that's out of date now because they just crossed the line and Coulthard gained quite a lot on that lap, 6.3 seconds, thanks to Schumacher going past the traffic.
Well, Barrichello clearly, or I should say Schumacher caught Barrichello at a part of the track where Barrichello would not concede ground. That's where the time was lost. And you've got to expect that you know it's going to happen. It will happen to you, it will happen to your competitor at a different point in the race. But I must say, having seen how well Schumacher's gotten through the traffic, it is a mirror of how well David Coulthard, and Coulthard has done a very good job in handling traffic, and he has not lost anything to Schumacher, neither has Schumacher gained anything on Coulthard.
So now he's got to find his way past Mika Häkkinen, and will Häkkinen move out of the way quite as easily? It's a difficult place, this, to move out of the way.
There's nothing that Schumacher will do on Häkkinen here. He will just try and place himself so as when they start this long right-hand corner, he will not get too close too early. He will keep the power progressively being applied to the point when he exits the corner, he is carrying more speed. But he's in the pits for a second time. That short fuel load that Michael Schumacher took on in his first stop sees Schumacher in the pits. He powers the tail of the car round. He has to be careful. He's got to get the car down to the mandatory 120 kilometers per hour. Second stop for Schumacher. Let's see how much fuel goes in. So car still up on the jacks, out in 6.5 seconds. Again, a short stop for the man in second place. Of course, Damon Hill will probably have taken that second place. It'll be very close indeed. So, surprise again from Benetton. Short fuel load at the first stop, short fuel load at the second stop, but we still don't know how much fuel that man is carrying.
Intriguing battle, and we're likely to see one more stop from Michael Schumacher before the end of this race, according to the sort of target he's on. It's going to be around lap 54, lap 55, somewhere around there, depending on the amount of fuel in the car. And still Coulthard has to make his second stop. And these battles in the pits just as critical as the battles out on circuit. But Coulthard now able to try and further extend that advantage if at all possible.
So Michael Schumacher and Benetton once again confounding everyone in the pit lane with further variety and option for a Grand Prix team. And really they have been the class of the field over the past 2 years when it comes to determination of how best to bring a race to you. The danger is that you get too clever, you get to believe in yourself too much. But certainly over the course of these last seasons, they've got it right virtually on every occasion.
So Coulthard leads, Hill has come into second, Schumacher down to third place thanks to that stop. That's the second stop that he's made, but the two Williams have not yet made this stop. So 11 seconds the gap between Hill and Schumacher, but Hill is some 20 seconds behind Coulthard. So still a long way to go in this race. We are just over the half distance mark now, and we're still yet to see the pit stops from Coulthard and Hill, the second round of pit stops, that is. Johnny Herbert in fourth, John Lacey in fifth, then Gerhard Berger, Martin Brundle, Heinz-Harald Frentzen in eighth place, Mika Häkkinen ninth, and Rubens Barrichello in 10th position. There you can see on your screen the gap between Coulthard and Hill after Hill's slow first stop. Johnny Herbert's the next one into the pits. You can see behind him the Williams crew are also ready, so we're going to be seeing one of the Williams come into the pits any moment. And how long a stop is this going to be for Johnny Herbert? It's again fairly quick, a bit slow getting away.
And that was because of Martin Brundle was coming into the pits in his Ligier, and the Benetton team had to check Johnny Herbert to avoid a pit lane collision, because Herbert would just drop the clutch, turn into the pit lane. So Benetton team also aware of traffic in the pit lane, and very important that it is too.
So Schumacher continues the battle. This time he can't see any of his opposition. They're too far up the road, but they will be coming in soon.
But important to see the lap time for Michael Schumacher. Remember this morning in that 30-minute unofficial session, he ran the oldest tires of his 7 sets. So he has got 4 prime sets of tires, all in great condition.
We just saw Damon Hill go through the picture.
23.702, quickest race lap so far in this Grand Prix for Michael Schumacher. and that was a massive 2.5 seconds out of the advantage of Damon Hill in second place. The gap between Hill in second and Schumacher third down to 8.6 seconds.
So Schumacher closing up towards Hill. Coulthard still has the outright fastest lap of this race from the earlier stages, but Schumacher's put his fastest lap personally of the race in there, and that just shows you with those new tyres on how much an advantage that gives him. But I think we should be seeing one of the Williams coming in pretty much this lap, I would expect. Whether it will be Coulthard or Hill, we'll have to wait and see, but let's see what happens. They're coming through the final sections now.
Roberto Moreno stays very sensibly, and when David Coulthard, race leader, into the pits, Roberto Moreno stayed clear on the left, right, and let Schumacher through.
Critical stop then from David Coulthard, race leader. Is he going to have a clean, clear stop? And is he going to be able to come back out in the lead of this race? They've got a problem. They've got a little slowness with that right rear this time.
Yes, indeed, that was a problem for Coulthard. And there, Damon Hill now leads the race. Coulthard's going to come out to the left of the screen. Oh, why does they cut across? We want to see whether Coulthard would keep or would be in second place, or would Michael Schumacher, with the momentum off the corner, put Coulthard behind him, I think, for the first time this weekend.
Indeed. Well, let's see what happens. But Damon Hill is now the race leader, and we want to see behind whether Coulthard and Schumacher are right together, and if so, which one is ahead. Presumably we'll see Damon Hill in at the end of this lap, and the Williams pit crew not enjoying quite as smooth running as they would like. Hill's now got some traffic to deal with.
And again, this is a problem. We saw Damon did not get through traffic as efficiently as teammate Coulthard or Michael Schumacher, and Jean-Christophe Bouillon, the first to come under the attentions of race leader Damon Hill. And I just hope that Bouillon is aware of the presence of Damon Hill. You can see how much quicker he is into the corner, and as the Sauber scrabbles for grip, Damon Hill cannot really get on the power. He wants to be on the power, but comes over to the right and then swings back to the left. And that's the oddest maneuver I've ever seen any driver make at this point of the circuit. But I have to say, it gave Damon Hill an advantage. Damon was able to remain on the clean line, and that was a very generous gesture by Jean-Christophe Bouillon.
Well, second place is indeed David Coulthard. Michael Schumacher is in third, just 2 seconds behind Coulthard now. And that gives you some idea. That really effectively, John, is a battle for the lead, because Hill's still got to make another stop. Coulthard and Schumacher just 2 seconds apart after that slightly longer stop for Coulthard.
Yes, Schumacher has got less fuel on board. He's been out in his tyres a couple of laps longer. And David Coulthard with a little bit more fuel on board, but fresher tyres. So the balance of speed really will be determined by what happens when they come up to lap cars. But the speed of the two cars, David Coulthard has been the quickest throughout the afternoon. Michael Schumacher's been about at 2/10 on average a lap slower when they've both been running clean. So David Coulthard ought to be able to gradually just ease away from Schumacher.
I'm just looking down into the pit lane, looking at the Williams pit. There's no activity down there, you know. I'm beginning to wonder whether they didn't put more fuel on board Damon Hill's car than they put on board David Coulthard's car to let him stay out there for a bit longer. And perhaps that was part of the reason for running that longer first pit stop. Although it did appear there was some sort of problem, perhaps they did put more fuel in.
They may well have had more fuel, but not for the length of time the car was in the pits. The car does not carry sufficient tank capacity unless somewhere, unbeknownst to those in the pit lane, they've managed to find a way of squeezing additional fuel in, but I don't think that is the case.
So 40 laps completed, 71 laps this race, remember. Coulthard second place, then Michael Schumacher. The gap between Coulthard and Schumacher's opened up. That's interesting, with Coulthard able to pull away from Schumacher on that last lap by over a second. So interesting that he can do that, and Schumacher still not finding the sort of speed from the Benetton that he wants.
And Coulthard made his way past Jean-Christophe Bouillon as well. So for Schumacher, he's got to now find a part of the track where he's not going to lose any time. And this race really now coming down to being a tactician's dream or a race commentator's nightmare.
Well, we wait to see with interest what goes on as Damon Hill there chasing after Rubens Barrichello, who was sliding massively. Or was it Eddie Irvine? Sliding massively coming out of that slow section that time. Lots of car control required, but Irvine manages to gather it all together again. Damon Hill, race leader, crosses the line, 41 laps completed, but look at David Coulthard, not far behind him now. The gap was 3.2 seconds last lap. It's 1.5 seconds this time around.
And once again, David Coulthard is the fastest man on the circuit. He's drawn down his teammate and race leader Damon Hill, and Michael Schumacher in third place is going backwards.
Rubens Barrichello, a quick stop for the Jordan crew. He was down in 12th place before that stop, and that obviously drops him down, but still Hill has not got past Irvine.
No, and Hill will be very unhappy indeed about this, because he does not, once again, need to lose that momentum by being caught behind a lapped car. And Eddie Irvine probably feels, well, if he's quick enough he can pass me. And this is always a fundamental problem on a circuit such as Estoril. When you're coming up against the back markers, you really need the cooperation that we've seen from other drivers, Mika Häkkinen included. Now Irvine, stay left, let the race leader go through.
Coulthard right behind Irvine now. This time he does move out, very clearly out of the way, and he saw Hill coming through, went through, but Coulthard now right with Hill. This is the battle for the lead of the race.
And Damon Hill must be furious. He lost 2 or 3 seconds in that lap or so behind Eddie Irvine, and that's given Coulthard the opportunity to draw back up to the tail of his teammate and race leader. And are we going to see a battle between these two Williams drivers? There appears to be no team orders. In a press conference yesterday, it appeared that neither driver really had even thought about discussing it, somewhat maybe incorrectly.
Now remember, Hill's tyres a fair bit more worn than David Coulthard's, because Coulthard's made a second stop. His tyre's relatively fresh, whereas Damon Hill's, they've done quite a few laps now. He came in around lap 18, so they've done something like 24 laps now, these tyres, and that's going to make life pretty difficult for him.
Well, clearly Damon Hill is still capable of running quickly, but Coulthard can run even quicker. There we see the best laps. What we look to see are the last laps, and we have them Coulthard just over a second faster on that last lap, but that was not because of Damon Hill, that was because of Eddie Irvine came into play and forced Hill to back off, and we would like to see what happens now. These two gentlemen are running free of lap traffic.
It's an interesting situation, because Schumacher, some 3.8 seconds behind Coulthard, of course, now has the opportunity to close up to this battle. If Coulthard gets held up behind Hill, which it looks as though that's quite possible here, then of course Schumacher closes right up. We then have a three-way battle for the lead.
So Coulthard, I think, probably aware of what the strategy for Damon Hill is going to be, and if Damon is going to come into the pits in the next 2 or 3 laps, his team, I believe, would tell him that, and not have a battle between the two drivers on the track. But Damon Hill stays out, completes lap 43 onto 44, and just ahead of them, the remaining Ligier of Martin Brundle.
Well, the Williams crew are getting ready, just having a quick look. They are out in the pit lane now, so I would imagine that we will be seeing Hill come in fairly soon now. And I wonder if that will be his final stop of the race. Quite likely, it must be, presumably, that he would then run for the remainder of the race. It will be something like 28 laps around that, and he should be able to do all that quite comfortably, certainly in terms of fuel. And it's a question then of just looking after the tyres for that section. And we're likely to see Coulthard and Schumacher both make a further stop, but a shorter stop, because they won't have to put so much fuel in. Hill stays ahead of Coulthard. We're on board with Coulthard, who must be feeling a little frustrated at this point.
I think he would like to see himself ahead of his teammate, and of course not prepared, and correctly so, to force an issue which could go so wrong.
They're a little demonstration of how the tyres of Damon Hill's car are not performing at the best. And again, you can see how much Damon Hill's sliding around, really struggling for traction now.
And look at David Coulthard right under the rear wing. As Damon Hill recovers from that moment, the back end of the car drifted out to the left, and David Coulthard, of course, his momentum still carrying forward, but Damon Hill into the pit.
So Hill pits, this is second stop, and this will then take him through to the end of the race. But it will be quite a lot of fuel going on board once again here for Hill. So we're not expecting to see the sort of high-speed stops that we've seen from Benetton, making much shorter stops. Let's watch to see what happens. The wheels going on okay, safely on. Now the fuel hose has to stay there, longer. Now they can release it, 10, 11 and a half seconds. He'll rejoin.
But that was only about 80 or 85 litres again of fuel into the tank, because the hose comes out before the clock stops. So Damon Hill on lap 45 out of 71 is around about 80 litres of fuel sufficient.
Coulthard is once again in the lead of this race and has a 4.2-second advantage over Michael Schumacher. More traffic to deal with. It all keeps getting quite exciting for Coulthard because he now has to find his way past. Mark Blundell's the next one to get past. He's running in ninth place.
And what Coulthard does not need is, having finally got himself back into the lead, to get bogged down again through cars being lapped. He wants to be able to get as many clean laps, to use the advantage that his car provides him, to draw as much time, because when he goes back into the pits, he's going to have to go in and come out and hope to be ahead of teammate Damon Hill.
So now, will he pick up the slipstream and be able to get past Blundell? Close together, closes up the gap. It looks as though he will be close enough. Blundell looking in his mirrors. You can see him checking as Coulthard goes past. Safe and cleanly, no problem that time.
And again, good cooperation from Mark Blundell. He allowed David Coulthard the road. And again, when you see race driving like that, those are drivers using their mirrors, using their brains, and not getting into these irresponsible situations that we have seen in the past, where one driver has held up the race leaders for maybe 2 or even 3 laps on some occasions.
There you can see, after that second stop, Damon Hill has come back out in third place, 27 seconds behind Coulthard, and that still makes him 23 seconds behind Schumacher. So it's still a long way down, but remember, he won't have to make another stop. Well, that's the way we're thinking at the moment, whereas Coulthard and Schumacher will have to make another stop.
But the trouble for Damon Hill is that although he's got fresh tyres, with that heavy load of fuel on, he will be in the same situation we saw earlier. He will not have the acceleration, and that's where a teammate here of Gerhard Berger, Alesi, was able to use his light car's advantage over Damon Hill's much heavier car.
Gerhard Berger running in 5th place at this point in the race. We haven't really seen an awful lot of the Austrian, but out he comes once again. Good stop, 10.3 seconds. He was running behind Alesi before he came in, and he now rejoins safely back into the battle. Johnny Herbert still in 6th place. Heinz-Harald Frentzen is 7th.
And Michael Schumacher, he's also now looking to find a way around as Mika Häkkinen. I was going to say Mark Blundell, but Mika Häkkinen's car is out. But Schumacher right up against the rear wing of Mark Blundell, and we don't know yet whether he's found his way past before they went into the first corner. Here we look at Mika Häkkinen out of the race. Further disappointment for Marlboro McLaren Mercedes-Benz this weekend. And, well, they've got a big weekend coming up next weekend for the European Grand Prix at the Nürburgring.
Home territory for Mercedes in Germany, of course, so they'll be hoping for better results, better luck on that occasion. Meanwhile, David Coulthard chasing after Martin Brundle. And Brundle is in 8th place in the Ligier, and he's some 16 seconds behind Heinz-Harald Frentzen. So once Coulthard gets past Brundle, he's got some clear space. He can concentrate on getting his head down and not having to worry too much about other traffic.
The only positive that's in David Coulthard's mind is that his teammate Damon Hill is going to have to do precisely the same thing as is Michael Schumacher.
Now let's watch once again, see how much sliding around is going on board Martin Brundle. Just ahead, we're on board with David Coulthard, and this is where Coulthard's got to judge the distance.
Yes, you can see closed down in the early part of the corner, the gap between himself and Brundle at the stage station. In the mid part, up into the exit, then carried that speed. Now going to pull out, dive down the inside. Again, another illustration of good race driving from both drivers, and that again is a perfect pass.
Indeed. Well, in fact, he hasn't got quite as much clear space as I thought, because he's still got another car to lap, and he's not too far away. That's Gerhard Berger. So here we are, and into the pits comes Mark Blundell. Mark Blundell running in 11th place as he came in. Very quick on the tyre change. Now then, fuel, that's finished, and off he goes. No problems for Mark Blundell. Back out once again, but we've already seen the loss of Mika Häkkinen in the other McLaren. So David Coulthard leads. He's on lap 48 now out of 71. 3.9 seconds his advantage last time around over Michael Schumacher. Damon Hill then another 22 seconds behind in 3rd place. Now we're expecting to see some more stops from Coulthard and Schumacher, and we would expect to see them in around about 6 or 7 laps if they go according to a fairly neat schedule. But of course they may change that.
Alesi in once again. So, Alesi's second stop, and there we see the time on the right, Pedro Diniz on the left, and slightly lethargic as Jean Alesi. He didn't quite have the wheels spinning as we normally see as the car hits the deck. Teammate Gerhard Berger comes on past pit exit.
Понятно, что теперь борьба развернется, может быть, в боксах, если лидирующие пилоты решатся сделать еще по одной остановке. Дэвид Кухарт проходит вот эту S-образную связку и выходит на последнюю часть дистанции. Вчера после квалификационных заездов Дэвид, напомню, что ему досталось pole position, он так прокомментировал это, что утром, во время утренней тренировки у него не все уладилось с настройкой машины, но затем он решил взять регулировки у своего партнера Демона Хилла, поскольку Хилл ездил и в пятницу, и во время утренней тренировки в субботу значительно быстрее, чем он, и у него действительно все получилось. Он добыл pole position, третью pole position, напомню, для него в этом сезоне. То есть вчера он был вполне доволен своими результатами. Ну что ж, сегодняшняя гонка оправдывает его оптимизм. Он пока лидирует. Выигрывает чемпиона мира Михаэля Шумахера 5,7 секунды. Хилл немножко подсократил свое отставание от чемпиона мира. Оно уже 21,9 секунды. Но все-таки это слишком большой разрыв, который...
Michael Schumacher is in second place, 5.7 seconds behind David Coulthard. News of a pit lane penalty for speeding in the pit lane for Andrea Montermini. Well, he's way down in 15th place, but still disappointing for the Italian in the Pacific Ford. But meanwhile, Coulthard, as I say, 5.7 seconds ahead of Schumacher. Hill is a 21 seconds behind in third place. Then Johnny Herbert in fourth. Then the two Ferraris, fifth and sixth. But Coulthard at the moment is busy trying to get past them as he laps the Ferraris.
And there, Martin Brundle, we saw how easy Coulthard got through. So Michael Schumacher runs down, the sister team to Benetton, and we'll hope that the momentum, his speed, but he's dropped back again. He's down to over 6 seconds behind David Coulthard. Coulthard's last lap in the high 1 minute 24s, 0.3 of a second quicker than Michael Schumacher. So Coulthard easing away, and I would say able to do it quite easily as well.
Indeed, superb performances from Coulthard. He's kept lapping consistently quickly. There's Eddie Irvine just coming back out of the pit lane. Ninth position at the moment for Irvine, just ahead of Rubens Barrichello. Well, he was just before the pit stop. That will change around as a result of that. And they're still both in there, but they see Frentzen and Brundle up ahead of them. Frentzen driving a good race still. He's been into the pit. He's down in 8th position, and he's 12 seconds behind Martin Brundle. But you do rather wonder if only he'd been able to take his original grid slot, if he hadn't stalled at the start of this. Well, Johnny could well have been battling in 4th position.
Indeed he could have, and that's the domain right now of Johnny Herbert, doing another good job in the Benetton team and backing up those two victories that he's enjoyed this year. And it is amazing just how little it takes to lift a driver. Okay, victory is no little thing. But there is Andrea Montermini in the pits for a stop to a penalty for speeding in the pit lane. So another little cross to bear for the Pacific Ford team.
Already lost their other driver very early on in this race, Jean-Denis Delatraz. Other retirements, including Olivier Panis, who went off after his 10-second stop-and-go penalty. Pedro Lamy was our first retirement. Disappointment for the Portuguese driver. Mika Hakkinen we've lost as well. And we don't quite know what the problem was there, but he stopped a few laps before. And so it's still Coulthard who leads. We've got 20 laps to go in the Portuguese Grand Prix. Still the gap between Coulthard and Schumacher opening up slightly, and still the main thing that we've got to think about now is the fact that both Coulthard and Schumacher will make an extra stop, and Hill's not going to, but he is 22 seconds behind Schumacher. I don't know if he's going to be close enough.
Well, it's considered about 25 seconds is the time that you spend entering the pit lane, stopped, exiting the pit lane back up to speed. In which case, that would see Damon Hill then overtake Michael Schumacher. But of course, the factor that we can't predict is how traffic will have an effect on these gaps. But right now, I think everybody has been extremely good. There's been very little sign of drivers not being constructive or helpful to those who are lapping them. And so there's really little advantage to the top three in relation to how they are in traffic.
Well, it certainly could be an interesting end to this Grand Prix. I mean, that gap, 25 seconds, as you say, Hill would maybe come out in front at least of Schumacher, which of course is his main priority, to beat him here today, to at least try and narrow that points disadvantage. But of course Schumacher will have better tyres, Hill will be struggling on slightly older tyres. We could end up with a situation of them running very close together once again here.
Well, I think at the end of the day, the Williams chassis, in spite of that revision of the rear suspension back to how they had the car at Monza and the rest of the season, clearly was a good decision, and it hasn't hurt the car in terms of competitiveness. And the Williams chassis is running stronger here in Estoril than Michael Schumacher. Look, Schumacher taking a line around the interior parabolica, which says to me he is struggling for grip. He has not got the performance from the car that he would want, and that's why the gap between himself and race leader now up to 7.1 seconds. It has got nothing to do with traffic. He's just struggling for grip.
So Schumacher fighting, and there you can see the car moving around as he tries to get on the power, and it is proving to be pretty hard work for him to keep it all under control at the moment. Coulthard is coming round to complete lap 53. Schumacher 7.1 seconds behind on the last lap. There goes Coulthard across. We've seen him get past both of those Ferraris already. Berger running 5th, Alesi 6th, and the gap this time has gone out a bit further.
I mean, for David Coulthard to get past both those Ferraris as well as he's done, again, is confirmation that that car and Coulthard are working together so well, and things look bad at this point for Michael Schumacher and Benetton, because clearly the problem that Schumacher has is in grip, or not grip, a lack of grip. And Damon Hill equally ought to be able to make inroads into Michael Schumacher in second place. He's got to do that because he cannot rely on anything other than what he himself is doing in his car to get ahead of Schumacher when Schumacher makes what will be his final pit stop.
Indeed, Hill charging hard at the moment. His lap time's very similar to Schumacher, but he was a tenth of a second faster on that last lap, and Schumacher's got some traffic coming up, but Hill will also have to deal with that, of course. Johnny Herbert in 4th place, still putting in another good, clean, consistent performance at the moment. Gerhard Berger and John Alesi. Martin Brundle in 7th place, just outside the point, with Heinz-Harald Frentzen 11 seconds behind him, so he's fairly comfortable in that 7th at the moment. Barrichello is in 9th place, but quite a long way back from Frentzen. Into the pits comes race leader David Coulthard. Lap 53, and Coulthard, this critical stop, his final stop, is it all going to go well for him? This is really important now.
Indeed it is. You must stop on the precise spot. The jacks go in, the wheels off, wheels on, the fuel hose is in. The jacks are dropped, then the fuel hose removed, 9.1 seconds. Michael Schumacher is in as well. So we see Coulthard leave the pits as Michael Schumacher comes in for his last service. He's on 7.1 seconds, slightly quicker from Benetton. And now the charge to the flag is on. But did Damon Hill pass Michael Schumacher, or did he get back out before the Brit came round?
Well, didn't get a chance to see as they came across the line, so we'll have to wait to see. Coulthard still leading this race, of course. A good stop from the Williams crew, but a very good stop from the Benetton crew. It was a couple of seconds faster than Williams, but has it been enough for him to get out in front of Damon Hill? If only we could have a look behind this. Some gap behind Coulthard, of course, but we want to find out the situation between Hill and Schumacher, the top two in the championship. Is Schumacher ahead, or is Hill ahead?
And it's also at this point in the race, on lap 55, that the physical side of this Grand Prix in Portugal begins to tell. And it comes all around the circuit, but no more And on the part that we're going to see David Coulthard come to very shortly, that final long right-hand corner. And that's a corner at this point when your neck muscles are aching, the weight of your head, the weight of the helmet, combined weights now. And the G-force through this corner builds by the yard to the point at the exit you're certainly pulling like 4G. And after 55 laps, as you look at Martin Brundle in the pits, at the end of 55 laps, you're turning right, but your head is falling over to the left. Fitness for race drivers is of a paramount importance. Performance can be gained by great conditions.
Confirmation of the classification that we saw just now as the drivers go across the line here. Coulthard leads, but Hill's in second place. 7 seconds the gap. And Michael Schumacher 2.8 seconds behind Damon Hill. Fascinating battle we've got in prospect now. Schumacher on better tyres than Hill. Hill in the Williams, which seems to be performing that a little bit better this weekend.
Well, race leader looks totally comfortable, very composed indeed. To date has not put a wheel wrong, has driven an outstanding Grand Prix, and we've seen that in the previous 2 Grand Prix, and it's too early to predict what may happen, but certainly David Coulthard deserving of his maiden Grand Prix win, and car and driver working really an outstanding performance today.
Yes, indeed, and into the pits comes Johnny Herbert. He's in 4th position. Gerhard Berger some way behind him, but I think Berger's probably going to end up going past him. In fact, he may lose out to both of the Ferraris. Out he comes once again.
And Benson goes past as Johnny Herbert makes his way onto the track, and there we see 15 laps remaining.
So indeed, Berger and Alesi both have gone past, as has Frentzen, so that drops Johnny back down into 7th place now. As meanwhile, there is Damon Hill, and he managed to extend the lead over Michael Schumacher, the battle for second. On that last lap, Schumacher now 4.6 seconds behind Hill. This is looking good for Hill from the point of view of the championship. He might not be winning this race, but he is ahead of Schumacher.
And if situations finish like this, that will take 2 points advantage away from Michael Schumacher, and the difference would be 13 for the final Grand Prix at Nürburgring next weekend.
Now, of course, the question of team orders does come in a little bit here, but as we've indicated already, it's very unlikely that Coulthard would give up a Grand Prix win to help Hill in this situation.
The critical factor here for the Rothmans-Williams-Renault team to give them their full title is to score maximum points for the team. They want to get the 16 points on offer in the Constructors' Championship. The battle in the Drivers' Championship is, I understand, being left in the hands of the 2 drivers. And if on the day David Coulthard can beat Damon Hill, the team is going to let it happen, as far as I understand.
And David Coulthard still chasing his first Grand Prix win. A vital part of his CV, of course, still trying to sort out his drive for next season, and certainly deserving of a Grand Prix victory. He's put in some great performances this year, and another great performance here.
Another little point of interest, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, currently in 6th place, has just recorded on the 57th lap his quickest race lap. So really, biggest disappointment for the Sauber team was that Frentzen's engine did not fire up, because clearly he would have run in a very strong 4th place, judging by the speed at which he's been running in the latter stages of the race.
He is in the points now in 6th position. Johnny Herbert indeed has dropped down to 7th. And the gap between them 2.7 seconds. So that could be an interesting battle for the final World Championship point there. Johnny Herbert on fresh tyres, of course, now. Martin Brundle behind him in 8th, then Rubens Barrichello, Marc Blundell, Eddie Irvine, and Jean-Christophe Fouillon in 12th place. But up front, Coulthard and Hill, Williams-Renault, dominating proceedings in the latter stages now. Oh, look at that.
Now that is an error. That is an error from Damon Hill. He locked up badly under braking into that hairpin bend, and the tyres will not like that. Remember, Damon Hill has been out longer on these tyres than David Coulthard, leading, and Michael Schumacher in second. And there's little errors like that that can cost you time. It unsettles you. Your rhythm goes momentarily. Damon Hill now on there. We see behind that is Johnny Herbert, in fact. So, in fact, maybe was it Michael Schumacher? In fact, it is the man in 3rd place. The gap has dropped suddenly to 2.9 seconds. I wonder has Damon Hill got a problem? Because suddenly the gap between these two has evaporated, where previously it was extending.
So now Hill's got a fight on his hands. His tyres more worn than Michael Schumacher's. Schumacher beginning to close up the gap, and he's got Damon Hill within sight now. And if he can get ahead of Hill, he can further extend his World Championship lead. And Schumacher will be chasing that down right to the checkered flag. We've still got something like 13 laps in this Portuguese Grand Prix to go, and this is now the interesting battle. Coulthard looks comfortable up front, 9.3 seconds.
Well, let's see what happens at the end of this lap to see whether that progress that Schumacher appeared to make was due to him, or was it simply because of the error that Damon Hill made coming up to this point of the circuit. It is here that Damon Hill locked up. His left front, he ran wide. He would have gotten onto the part of track that is dirty. And there, the gap visually does appear to be shrinking. So, in a second or few, you will find out there is the intermediate times. A look at that 1.885, almost a second at the second intermediate point. And Damon Hill appears to be scrabbling for grip.
All of a sudden, just when it looked as though he was pulling away from Schumacher, he is now coming under some serious pressure. 1.9, the gap as they cross start finish.
And Rubens Barrichello peels off just at the top of the picture into the pits, and this will be Barrichello's third stop.
Barrichello stopping from 9th place, but as you can see, 12 laps remaining. And now the question, is Schumacher going to close up to Damon Hill? And if so, will he find a way past into second place? Rubens Barrichello there in the pits for his final stop, and that looks pretty clear.
Another interesting time from somebody further down the field. Martin Brundle in 8th place. Suddenly, his Ligier Mugen Honda's come alive and done a lap in 1 minute 24.427. Way quicker than race leader, almost a second and a half quicker. Now, sometimes we do get little errors on our Tag Heuer computer screen. We'll have to wait and see whether that one is one of those, or is that for real?
Well, indeed, if he can repeat those sort of laps, then he could have a chance of closing up to Johnny Herbert, but the gap between them is big, although Johnny's last lap was quite slow.
The gap between Hill and second, Schumacher third, is anything but big, and Damon Hill must now begin to feel the attentions of third place Michael Schumacher. And again, it's around this, there's the gap down to less than a second. It's round this long, long corner. This is where Damon Hill's car, I suspect, will be hurting, but it'll be hurting everywhere. And he's also now got to find a way past Paulo Pedro Diniz in the 40 Corsi Ford. Roberto Moreno.
Roberto Moreno gets out of the way. Damon Hill gets past him safely. And Schumacher now has the job of doing so as well, but Roberto Moreno does a good job there, keeps out of the way of both of them.
Yes, in fact, Schumacher almost overran the back of the 40 Ford in his need to get past as quickly as possible, but the battle for second place, the battle for the World Championship this year is all set, but let's hope the excitement does not again turn to drama.
Well, indeed, this is exciting stuff once again. Hill and Schumacher in nearly a wheel-to-wheel battle.
Damon Hill's head left, right in the mirrors, seeking out Michael Schumacher's Benetton. And when a driver does that, the one doing the chasing begins to know that he has got the measure. And look at that, all over him in that very slow, tight, irritating sequence of corners that finally leads onto this long final corner onto straight. But Schumacher's caught up. But can Schumacher apply the pressure? Can he force his way past Damon Hill? Or will Damon Hill defend, as we know he is capable of, but more importantly, he has to do?
So, the battle on between Hill and Schumacher. Both of them running, remember, under the threat of race bans. They're both running under suspended bans, with Damon Hill's one race suspension on his ban from Monza, and Schumacher still running under a four-race ban suspended from Spa. So, neither of them will want to do anything that the stewards may take issue with.
Interesting the way Schumacher exits some of these corners. He appears to be changing his line to try and give himself an option to look at a way to get past Damon Hill. And look, closes down now. He's going to slip down the inside. No. But, you know, it's doing that. He's worrying, he's teasing, he's harrowing Damon Hill. That is a passing place. It is fair, but easily defended. So, Schumacher putting the pressure on Damon Hill. Damon's now not looking in the mirror quite so much. He must stop doing that. But look down the inside, Schumacher goes, he's gone through. And Michael Schumacher ran out of breath because he made a daring maneuver. Damon Hill, with intelligence and race strategy, did not drive into Michael Schumacher. He knew had he done that, the situation was over for both of them. And bearing in mind the position both are in relation to race bans, he had to. But Schumacher did something that gave him second place. He took the risk. He knew the downside, but if they both went out, look at that. I mean, so late on the brakes. Damon maybe could have been a little bit more obstructive. He ought to, in my mind, have been so. He should have put his car in the middle of that, not on the corner, but the approach to the corner, and prevent the look. Frank Williams' face, well, it resigned to the situation. He saw the strength of character of Michael Schumacher, and he saw the strength of character of Damon Hill, and clearly Schumacher was the stronger of the two.
Schumacher certainly coming from a long way back. Classic good racing philosophy to attack straight away, to get within what is nearly range and then just go for it, not sit there waiting for the right opportunity to come. He just went for it as soon as the gap was there.
Yes, a straight out of my book of how to overtake quickly.
Schumacher into second place then, and Hill must be, well, difficult situation for him now. He's seen the performance of his tyres go away from him. They've decided on a two-stop strategy, of course, and is he wondering now whether that was the wrong decision? David Coulthard on a different strategy is leading this race, and he's leading it by over 12 seconds. Well, he was last time round. Schumacher's actually closed it up a little bit, as you can see, but only by a few tenths. And maybe Hill's wondering, did I decide to do the right thing?
Well, I think the evidence is in front of us. We've got Michael Schumacher on 3 stops and David Coulthard on 3 stops, both ahead of Damon Hill on 2. So I think that is the answer.
Behind them, Phil Gerhard-Berger running in 4th place, but a long way back behind Hill. He's 1 minute and 3 seconds behind Damon Hill. Then it's John Alesi in 5th, Heinz-Harald Frentzen in 6th. Johnny Herbert still in 7th, hasn't really been able to close up to Heinz-Harald Frentzen. We expected he might be able to challenge with the fresher tyres, but they're both running at about the same sort of pace. Martin Brundle in 8th place, then Mark Blundell and Eddie Irvine rounds out our top 10. Still got quite a few cars running. We've got 16 cars still in the race out of the 24 that started, and now Michael Schumacher just working his way past one of those slower cars that looks like Taki Inoue.
Indeed it was, and Taki Inoue again doing a good job, as we've more or less seen throughout the afternoon. The drivers that are being lapped, and you're talking about 3 times now, Taki Inoue has had a lap by race leader. They've stayed over on the right, and race, or second place man Schumacher gets through without any difficulty whatsoever.
63 laps completed now, and just 8 laps to go for David Coulthard. And, well, I wonder what he's feeling now. It's still some way to go. It's a 2.7-mile track, remember. In fact, he's just crossed the line now, so it's 7 laps to go. But for Coulthard, this is his first full season of Grand Prix racing. Let's not forget that. Sometimes it's easy to think that Coulthard's been around because he did quite a few races last year, but it wasn't a full season. It was a great debut. He put in some strong performances, took his first podium finish here in Estoril, when he should have been on the podium in Monza, but ran out of fuel towards the end. But John, it's been a little bit of an up and down season for him this year, but what a race he's driven so far.
Indeed, and really the potential that David Coulthard showed in last season, the expectations of his drives like this in Spa and in Monza never materialized. Although he did lead in Argentina and he had a first pole position there, something went wrong. Now, I think David Coulthard, with hindsight, will say a lot of that was due to my health. He had tonsillitis, and that affected his fitness, and if you're not fit, then performances will not be consistent or strong. But all of a sudden, when the news came that Jacques Villeneuve would be the teammate to Damon Hill next year, coincidentally, David Coulthard's performances not only became much, much more convincing, but he started to lead races in a way that makes a driver stand out as being a great driver.
Yes, indeed, and the way that he's been able to set the pace in the last few races. Earlier in the season, for example, Hockenheim was an example where Damon Hill and Michael Schumacher, well, Damon Hill not so much because he went out in the first corner, but Schumacher was running at a pace and Coulthard didn't seem to be able to run at that pace, whereas we perhaps would have expected a Williams to be able to compete. And yet, in the last few races, he's been the one setting the pace. It's completely different.
Indeed it has, and the pace that David Coulthard has set has been outstanding. And really a great drive from the young Scot. And on lap 66, 5 remaining at the end of this lap. You know, when you're in these situations, you'd never ever think about the checkered flag until you've taken it. Disappointment can happen in the last lap. We've seen it happen on so many occasions. But there Frank Williams must feel somewhat disappointed because, first of all, his cars are not first and second in the Constructors' Championship. And equally importantly to him, Damon Hill's chances of challenging Michael Schumacher for the championship in this, the 13th round, that's gone away. And, well, the Constructors' Championship very much within their grasp with 4 races after this weekend. But the Drivers' Championship is beginning to look awfully ominously Michael Schumacher's for the second year in succession.
Looking good for him, there's no doubt about it, but not gaining such an advantage here. He'll gain just 2 points if they stay where they are now. Johnny Herbert still running in 7th place, and still that gap between him and Frentzen for the final point. A little too large, I think, for Johnny to really close it down in the remaining laps. He's 4 seconds behind, and as I said before, they're both running at very much the same pace. Coulthard leads Schumacher by 11 seconds. Damon Hill is now 6 seconds behind the German.
Bits of bodywork or simply a bit of plastic bag blowing on the track. It probably more likely was a piece of plastic bag, but just caught it on the side of the screen as Johnny Herbert came through. So another hard race for no reward for the man who's been on the winner's podium twice this year, and after a war of words almost at Monza, a reward given on the winner's podium, but the decision by the Benetton team to go with John Alesi, and then the late shock news that Gerhard Berger would be with him once again. He's Benetton with a very, very strong driver lineup indeed.
Johnny Herbert, 3rd in the World Championship, in the Drivers' Championship coming into this race, but he's going to lose that if Coulthard takes the maximum points here. There'll just be 1 point between them. Coulthard on 29 points at the moment. He would go to 39, Johnny on 38, so it's quite a close battle between those two. And it would in fact be the first point for David Coulthard for quite a few races. He finished in 2nd place in Hungary. Good race there, but the last 2, of course, Spa and Monza, I've seen him go out when in such strong positions. There you can see the gap between Schumacher and Hill, 6.2 seconds. And in fact the gap between Hill and Berger, an absolutely immense gap. The 2 Ferraris very close together though, John. There's only something like 0.6 of a second between them.
Yeah, and they'll both have red mist in their eyes in the closing laps of the race, because the honour of being the first Ferrari across the line regardless of position is very important
in the Benetton garage. And well, it might not be a perfect day for them. They're not seeing their man winning, but in terms of the championship, it's still good news.
Well, I don't think they're going to be desperately unhappy. They've come here and they're going to be on the podium. They will have extended their lead in the Drivers' Championship, and they will still maintain the lead in the Constructors' Championship, though that gap will have closed down. But the importance of it to Benetton, no less than that to Williams.
Not a nice view really for Johnny Herbert to see yourself being lapped by your teammates. It's not something you really want to see very much, but that's the way it's gone in this race for Johnny. Of course, starting a little further back and then getting tied down in some of the battles in the race, running in 7th place, and it looks as though Schumacher is going to put him a lap down as we go on with just 3 laps to go.
Well, there you can see the lights on the side of the dashboard, the readout, and that indicates that that Renault V10 engine with the draft from teammate Herbert was right on the limit, and any more and it would have started to cut out. So that's how finely geared a Grand Prix car these days is. Not in the good old days when you're at a latitude of about 400 revs. When it comes on the limiter, it's so easy to predict and to preset.
So So Schumacher continues on his way. Hill has dropped further back, and he certainly has struggled for pace in the last few laps. Coulthard just going through traffic, so he's gone a little bit slower on that last lap. But Hill 9 seconds behind Schumacher. This gives you some idea of the loss in performance for Hill in the latter stages of this race, going for that 2-stop policy. So for Schumacher, he'll be able to go to the Nürburgring with that lead in the World Championship slightly more ahead. And, well, I don't think it'll be quite enough, even if Hill doesn't finish the race in Germany, for Schumacher to actually take and confirm the title there. He would need to be 30 points ahead.
Yes, indeed he would. But just thinking about, why Damon Hill opted to go for 2 stops, my theory on that is that was the percentage race strategy. The 3-stop strategy on paper more or less looked the same, but of course it's fraught with danger. You've got to overtake people more than you do on the 2-stop strategy. You're going to be ahead of them, then back behind them. So I think that for Damon Hill, it must have been a clear decision to go for a percentage race. It may mean that he loses position not in terms of championship, but in terms of points. On the other hand, it could have been the smart decision on the day. Clearly, it has not worked out that way. The 3-stop strategy for David Coulthard and Michael Schumacher was right, and that's why these two lead and are second in the Grand Prix.
So there you see the gap between Coulthard and Schumacher. As I say, Coulthard did get a little bit involved in traffic on the last lap. Has seen the gap reduced by about a second. Interesting, the comments about, yes, well, in fact, he's coming up behind the Ferraris again, so that could cause him some fun.
Yeah, just interesting that Ferrari also opted for a 2-stop for Alesi and a 3-stop for Berger. For them, it's worked out absolutely perfectly. They're running nose to tail. Berger stopped 3 times. He is less than half a second. You could see the gap there ahead of Alesi. So in their case, both drivers found identical, almost part of the track with different strategies, which was not the case in Williams.
It did seem as though that first stop for Damon Hill was longer than it should have been, even so.
I think that stop is what's caused Damon Hill to be running in 3rd place. He could so easily have been second, and arguably he could have been winning the race. So whatever happened in that stop, it took 16 seconds before he was rolling again, has undoubtedly been the primary reason for the disappointment. I'm sure Damon Hill will express in the press conference, and certainly we'll see in his face on the podium.
So Coulthard now on his way to victory here in Portugal. It's been a superb drive from the young Scot, and isn't it about time that he took his first ever Grand Prix win?
And like Johnny Herbert in the British Grand Prix, when he won his first Grand Prix, his mother and father were there. For David Coulthard, Mum and Dad are here, and I'm quite sure that their fingernails have been bitten, and the tears will flow very shortly indeed as he just locks up very briefly. But what a great drive, what a great victory. We anticipate in about 3 corners time for David Coulthard, and this is, I think, we're going to see the first of many, or not many, there's only 4 Grand Prix after this left, but I would not discount David Coulthard being a winner again this season.
David Coulthard then comes across the line to complete 71 laps of the Portuguese Grand Prix, and he's the winner. He waits until he crosses the line. He was not going to put his hand up until he knew he'd won the race, and at last David Coulthard has won a Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher finishes in 2nd place and Damon Hill in 3rd.
And I think I'm right in saying that David Coulthard is the first Scot to win a Grand Prix since 1973, when Jackie Stewart won many, and of course won the 3rd of his 3 world titles.
Hill across the line then in 3rd place. Gerhard Berger finishing in 4th place. And Jean Alesi in 5th. In fact, we're still waiting for them to come through, so let's not say that too early, just in case they have a final problem. But what a superb race from David Coulthard. It really worked for him this weekend. Pole position, he's ended up with the fastest lap as well, and he's taken the victory. He's taken everything you can have.
And look at the jubilation within the team, and David Coulthard's advisor just to the left of Frank Williams. And sometimes victories come at very, very vital moments in the driver's career, and none more so in the case of David Coulthard, because we believe that his plans for the future will be made known at Nürburgring in a week's time. And as I say, David Coulthard's business manager was in that picture in the Williams garage, and I'm sure the look on his face was more about how much am I going to make out of this victory for David Coulthard than anything else.
Schumacher giving him the acknowledgement for the win, and certainly these two seem to get on pretty well, and I don't think Schumacher will be too upset about Coulthard winning this one. Schumacher finishing ahead of Hill, that's his main requirement, and there you can see Gerhard Berger and John Lacey indeed did finish 4th and 5th. Heinz-Harald Frentzen again taking that final point as consistent as ever, and that a performance worthy of note from the back of the grid.
I mean, outside of the performance of the front three, and in particular David Coulthard, Heinz-Harald Frentzen's drive has got to be a drive of the highest order. To start at the back of the field and finish in the points and be ahead of Martin Brundle, Mark Blundell, the two Jordans of Irvine and Barrichello, really was a great drive, and a signal that Sauber with that Ford Z-Tech R engine, after a difficult beginning to the season, are beginning to be a threat to the top 4 teams.
Johnny Herbert bringing his car in just outside the points on this occasion for Johnny Herbert, so he'll be a little disappointed, especially after the elation of the win in Monza, but he'll also be pleased for David. I know he'll be pleased for Coulthard finally taking his win. They're good pals, these two, and of course Coulthard was delighted to see Johnny win at Silverstone earlier in the year when David himself had a possible chance of victory there.
Well, I think it's great that we have seen this year 3 new visitors to the winner's podium. You know, for so long there was a Michael Schumacher or Damon Hill just carving up the Grand Prix victories between them, but now 3 more faces. And the thing is, they're all smilers. They all love it when they get up there.
It's all good stuff, and there he is, David Coulthard. Isn't that superb to see him finally take the win?
It's a wonderful sight for David Coulthard, for his mother and father here, and for everybody who have supported this young Scot all the way through his career, starting in karts and ending up with Paul Stewart Racing, and through their efforts getting him into the Williams Renault team as a test driver. And look at that, a nice moment between the 2 Williams drivers. Damon Hill offers his congratulations to race winner David Coulthard, and well done, Michael.
Damon Hill gets up on the scales to be weighed, and it looks as though Michael Schumacher, a little bit of stiffness. That's unusual from him.
Very much so, and I think maybe part of his problem has been either cramp or he's just been badly positioned. For some reason, a driver's seat can appear to alter during the course of a season. Drivers do lose weight, and if you move around too much on a circuit like this, where you really have to be tightly located in the seat to make sure that you're comfortable and you can drive the car efficiently, looks to me like Michael Schumacher, his seat or something in the car was giving him a problem.
What a bumpy circuit this one, so perhaps that's part of the reason. There's Gerhard Berger stepping away from his Ferrari after a hard afternoon's work and 4th place. And there the German fans in the stands, along with a few Finnish fans as well, and delighted to see that Schumacher still ahead in the championship.
Yes, indeed, but I think there's a few Heinz-Harald Frentzen fans there now, and if they aren't at this race, I think there certainly will be when they go to Nürburgring in a week's time, because it's not just Michael Schumacher who's going to be a hero, it's going to be Heinz-Harald Frentzen. So 2 German drivers now capable, as we have seen, of getting onto the podium, and I mean, there's no nation more nationalistic than Germany.
So Schumacher now with a 17-point advantage in the World Championship over Damon Hill. And there is David Coulthard, moves up into 3rd place in the World Championship, but more importantly, takes his first Grand Prix win. Well, it seems to be a good circuit for him here. Took his first ever podium finish last year, and now the first victory. David Coulthard, and look at those Union Jacks flying in the grandstands. Quite a lot of British fans out here this weekend, and a lot of support for David Coulthard. And I think that many people in British motorsport and supporters of Grand Prix racing in the UK will be just so delighted to see Coulthard take this win. And I think it's a victory that